Welcome back to another episode of Bosco Talks, BYU and more. Thank you all so much for tuning in and listening to these podcasts. They have been so much fun to record with my dad and even doing some on my own. Today is another solo episode with me, Dallin, and we're going to be talking about the BYU team so far this year, my thoughts, my opinions. Not that any of that really matters, but it's fun to talk about. Then we'll go through my top 5 BYU games that I've experienced live, whether it's watching it on TV live or being at the game. So there's obviously tons of very exciting BYU games throughout its history. So I'd love to hear from you guys what your favorites are, what your favorite memories are, different things like that. So let us know on the socials this week what your favorite memories are at BYU games or your favorite games that you've experienced. And I'll share some honorable mentions too that obviously were incredible games, but top 5, these ones in my opinion are top notch. And then I'm going to share a little bit about my favorite BYU football player of all time, why he's my favorite player. Obviously this is not including my father, my dad, because he's my favorite player, of course. But we have a great story with that, with my favorite player, so we'll dive into that at the end. But we'll start with talking about the current season. Obviously, very little to complain about, and the complaints are very nitpicky because we're 2-0, handled business in both games. I think there's a lot of people that wish, including myself, that we would throw it downfield a little bit more to just get Bear a little bit more comfortable with in-game throws. He's been short on a couple of them. A lot of that is just practice speed versus game speed, and he'll be fine. He had a really good throw in the second half of the Stanford game to Chase Roberts on a post route. Dropped it in there really nicely. So I'm not too worried that he is going to throw interceptions because of that, or he's not going to have good throws. He'll be fine. But as a fan, I want to go downfield. I love the big play, the exciting play, and we've had some really fun run plays this year with LJ, who's been incredible. But something about throwing the ball downfield and having long completions, there's nothing like it. So as a fan, that's kind of selfishly what I want, but the team has obviously handled business very well and has done an incredible job. So the defense is as good as it was last year, if not better, holding both of these teams to under 100 yards or close to under 100 yards. Maybe not Stanford. They might have been a little bit over with some of their late game passing. But it's really helped having these big guys on the defensive line just get into the backfield. We've had a lot of hurries from the other quarterbacks, which cause interceptions. We've had some fumbles in the backfield. So it's been really fun to see these big athletic men rush the quarterback and get some pressure on him, which Batty did a great job last year, but we really haven't been able to do that a lot in BYU's history. We've had a few guys, right? Kyle Van Noy was obviously one of the best to do it. Ezekiel Ansah was also another one that was great at it. But as a collective, this is a really good group. We haven't even seen Kirkland play, so it's going to be really fun when he comes back and just to see him get in there and see what he can do. So the defense has been awesome. Again, it's kind of what we expected after last year and a lot of people returning, but I think they've even been better than what I expected early. So it's going to be fun to see them against some better competition. East Carolina might be a little bit better than both teams we've played. Definitely better than Portland State, but once we get into Big 12 play, it's, all these guys are big, fast, and strong. So it's going to be really fun to see the defense play against some of these people. Offensively, again, LJ's been incredible. Looks really good. Looks really smooth. Really good at finding the holes. So it's exciting. There's nothing like BYU football, and my expectations are always high. And do those expectations get crushed sometimes? Of course, but that's part of being a college football fan. And so I'm looking forward to these next games. It's not ideal that we have a bye so early. We just had a bye. This episode will come out Monday. We would have had a bye on Saturday. Don't like having a bye this early. I love watching BYU football, so anytime we have a bye, it's kind of a long week for me, but excited to kind of get back into it, get some games going, and have some exciting games coming up. So let's get into the top 5 BYU games I've experienced. So my number 5 is the 2007 Las Vegas Bowl, BYU versus UCLA. We ended up winning 17-16. If you remember, we blocked a field goal with 3 seconds left, and absolutely incredible finish. I remember sitting there watching the game and just being so nervous. Like, I can't believe we're going to lose with 3 seconds left. I think they had a big play to set that up too on their drive. So you kind of feel deflated, and then as it gets blocked, it's just pure excitement and so much fun. I loved going to Las Vegas Bowl games back in that era when we used to go all the time, and it was so much fun. And that one specifically was just such a fun one to be at and to experience. Austin Collie in that game had some pretty impressive catches. If you go onto YouTube, search the Las Vegas Bowl 2007, you can see some highlights. He had some over-the-shoulder catches that were just awesome. And I forgot to mention in our team this year that JoJo Phillips is out, and he's one guy that we're really gonna miss. I don't know how long he'll be out, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because I really like JoJo as a receiver and think he could be great. And so we have a lot of depth there. But anyway, back to the Las Vegas Bowl. We're gonna miss JoJo for sure, though. So that was my number 5. Obviously, you can't beat a game-winning blocked field goal. That's amazing. My next game is 2009 BYU versus Oklahoma. We came into the season number 20. They came in number 3. Sam Bradford was their quarterback. We still had Max. I think it was his senior year. I believe it was his senior year. And we had Dennis Pitta that year, and it was a really fun team. All those years with Max were really fun. The 2017, he was a sophomore. We had Collie, Harvey Unga, who's one of my favorite running backs to play at BYU. Fun story with Harvey. I used to work out in the same area that he did with Dave Stroformance. And sometimes when those guys, the NFL guys, were there, we would race them and we would do sprints against them and stuff. And I remember they put me up against Harvey. He was injured at the time. I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school, maybe sophomore. And I'm pretty sure, I could be remembering this wrong, but he was a little injured, so he was going 70-80%. I'm pretty sure he was running backwards and he was running faster than me. And I may not be the fastest kid, but running backwards versus at 80%, 70% versus someone running full speed forward at 100% and still beating them in a 40, 50, 60-yard dash. I will never forget that. And that's when I knew that these guys were different. These guys that are in the NFL that are high-level college athletes, they are just different. And so that was one of my favorite memories of working out there and just being like almost defeated. Like, I cannot believe I just lost a race to an injured Harvey Unga who's running backwards. So anyway, that was fun. Back to the BYU Oklahoma game. I was looking at some key highlights of that game because, watching it on TV, that was so long ago, but I just remember that being such a fun game. Unfortunately, Sam Bradford got hurt in that game, so you wanted to have him healthy and beat him that way, but it was later in the game, I believe. Maybe it was early. He was like 14 of 16 at the time, or 14 of 18, so I think he broke his collarbone. But with 3 minutes left, Max Hall threw a touchdown pass to McKay Jacobson, and on that drive there was a 4th and 4 that we got with Dennis Pitta. So again, that was such a fun year. Beating the number 3 team, first game of the year. I think it was in, I can't remember what stadium it was in, but I think it was a pro field. But again, that was one memorable game for me. I loved watching that one. Okay, my number 3 is kind of a dual game, or it's kind of 2 games back to back. So it's 2015, BYU versus Nebraska, when Tanner Mangum threw the Hail Mary to Mitch Matthews. And then with that is the following game was Boise State, who was ranked, I believe, and throwing, I think it was in the last minute, I think, kind of a long pass to, I think it was Mitchell Juergens, for a touchdown, and we ended up winning that game too. So that kind of back to back, that was a fun year for Tanner. It was interesting. He came in for Taysom. Taysom got hurt in the Nebraska game. With, I think that injury was the Liz Frank. So kind of another freak injury for Taysom. He's obviously had an amazing NFL career, and even with the injuries he's had, one of the BYU greats. But Tanner came in, and I think there wasn't a lot of expectation because of Taysom. And so it was really fun to have Tanner come in and just have those back-to-back games and really boost his confidence that year. And that was a fun year. But that Hail Mary with 5 seconds left in Nebraska, away at Nebraska, and then the Boise State game at home, I kind of have those two matched together as my number 3. My number 2, I have BYU versus Utah, the 4th and 18. I'm trying to remember. I believe this was also 2007. Yes, this was 2007. So again, with that Las Vegas Bowl team, 2 really amazing plays, right? 4th and 18, down 10-9 to your rival at home. Probably a couple minutes left in the game because you got to go for it at that point, right? Probably under 3 minutes. And to just see Max Hall in the stadium throw that pass, and then you just see Austin Collie wide open, and then it was just surreal. That 4th and 18, like, what are the chances of getting a 4th and 18? Probably not very high. So getting it, especially against Utah, then getting the 2-point scoring, getting the 2-point conversion, and winning 17-10, just a classic. And then my number 1, all of you can probably guess it, Beck to Harline, BYU Utah 2006. So back-to-back years of really incredible plays against Utah, and no better team to have these plays against, right? But watching it on TV, you just kind of felt deflated that last play because you're like, man, we have to score. This Utah defense is really good. What's going to happen? And it felt like an eternity that John Beck was just sitting back in the pocket, kind of running around, and then he just lets it go, and you basically hold your breath, and then you see Harline kind of slide on his knees and catch it and then throw up his hands and a touchdown. And I just remember me and my brothers, we just jump up, we're ripping our shirts off, we're running outside, we're swinging them around, we're jumping up and down. And I will never forget that game and watching it at home with my dad and my brothers because it was such a fun game. So those are my top 5. I do have some honorable mentions. I do have the Taysom versus Texas games. The problem was I was serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I was a missionary at the time. So I, unfortunately, did not get to see either of those games. I heard a lot about them in the emails, and let me tell you, if anything made me homesick, it was reading those emails of Taysom destroying Texas. And, there was other times I felt homesick, but those ones really hurt when people were telling me about those games. Okay, another one, 2021, beating Utah It had been 9 games since we'd beat them. They were on a 9-game win streak. So that one was kind of a relief, beating them at home. And another really fun BYU game to be at. Oklahoma State last year, when we scored in the last 20 seconds, 10 seconds of the game after, looking like we were going to lose. Funny story with that one is I went to that game with my oldest. He was 5 or 6 at the time. We left probably at the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter. They were tired. He was there with his cousin, and they were just beat. On the way home, they both fell asleep. So I'm listening to the game on the radio, and Oklahoma State scores, and we've got to go down and score, and there's not that much time left. And so Park put my son on my shoulder, run inside, turn the TV on, and he's just laying down on me sleeping. And I turn the game on, and my heart is just pounding, but I've got to be quiet because he's sleeping on me. So when Jake threw that pass to Darius Lassiter and we scored, I just remember whisper screaming so loud, trying not to wake up my son. And so I will never forget that game. And unfortunately, like I said, I left. I was at the game and then left. But that was a really fun one to experience. And just having my son laying on me asleep and me being very excited but not being able really to do much was really fun. And then kind of my last one is the Algier Punch versus Arizona State. That was a really good Arizona State team. They had Jaden Daniels. And, the stadium was, I wouldn't say it was loud because we had the ball, but Jaron threw the ball, it got picked off, and you could just feel the stadium deflate. The guy's running back. It looks like it's going to be a pick six. And out of nowhere, Algier just jumps up, dives, and just punches the ball out. And it was almost, you're just shocked and just like, what just happened? And then we get the ball back, and it ended up that we win that game. So super fun game. Again, I'm sure there's plenty of games that I'm missing. Let me know your favorite games too, because it's always fun to hear stories of games that people were at. And so let me know what your top 5 BYU games are and how my list is. Okay, last thing on this episode is going to talk about my favorite BYU football player of all time. And so my favorite player of all time is Jamal Williams. What's fun about that is he's had some interviews in the pros where he talks about Pokemon and different things. He loves anime, Pokemon, and my boys love Pokemon. And so I've shown them those interviews. He had like an Eevee, which is a Pokemon. He had like an Eevee beanie on one time, and they loved it. So they're like dying to meet Jamal and talk to him about Pokemon. So it's really fun for me because Jamal's my favorite player to have Jamal be their favorite player. We got some sports football cards I got at Jamal Williams, and my boys treat it like a Babe Ruth baseball card. They just love it, and they take really good care of that card specifically. And it's so fun. But when I was in high school, and we'll talk about this in another episode, kind of injuries and overcoming injuries, but I tore my ACL going into my senior year. It was about a month or 2 before the season started. It was really tough for me. And my dad knew that Jamal was my favorite player. And so Jamal came over to our house just to talk to me. And I just remember sitting there. And talking to Jamal and just feeling like he cared about me. And like his personality is the same on the field, off the field. Like he's excited about life and he really cares to connect with people. And like he wasn't that much older than me at the time, maybe a year or 2. But he shared some injuries that he overcame and just gave me some good advice. And it really meant a lot to me that he would take time out of his schedule to just come talk to me. He didn't know me. There was nothing special about my situation or who I was besides that I'm Robbie's son. But even that, and I've just always really loved that. And the way that he was able to kind of lift my spirits and kind of shift my mindset from like, this was really terrible for me, and just kind of all right, I got to be excited about life again. Like these things happen. And it really changed the rest of that time. And so I was really, really thankful for that. And Jamal will always be one of my favorite players. So thank you for tuning in today. Please go to the social media channels, follow them, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave a review for the podcast, share the podcast, and we'll see you all next time.